Hey, so, hold on. I'm trying to find that song. I keep missing it. Maybe this is it. I don't know. Oh, hey, listen, I made cornbread stuffing with sauteed garlic, mushrooms, canned vegetables, scrambled eggs, and diced up Havarti cheese mixed into it and baked it. It's so good. And then I made this. It's kind of like this southern food. I'm just getting this recipes back in my mind. I don't know. I was thinking about my mom. It's going to be her birthday next month. I don't know. I don't know if anybody really knows when her birthday is. I do. I was thinking about that thing I said earlier about reliving the past if people don't learn from it. And it's really true. I think that was my last lesson that I had to learn. I already knew it, though. That's the thing. I already knew it. I didn't have to. It's hard when you forgive, when you are constantly beaten down, and then you forgive, and you forgive, and you forgive. Because sometimes you think, when is it my turn to finally get something from that? I gave that up. I gave up thinking that was ever going to happen. You know. And I was never nice to people because I thought I was going to get something in return. And that was... It was a hard life. It was, and I have to admit that. It was not easy. And I told you that those people at Cabrini used to call me aloof and standoffish, and a lot of people thought that about me. They said, well, you come from money. And I was like, I come from nothing. You know, my mom used to feed Tom first, and then we would eat pot pies and leftovers. Well, and chicken gizzards. Fried chicken gizzards. I love those. And we caught our own crawdads in the creek. And when we did have money, Tom gambled it all away. I mean, you know. And Harold was no better. Her other husband. I mean, he took me to New York once, though, in his semi. And then he got Huntington's chorea, which is a horrible disease. He hit me once, too. And then I ran away. You know. Or he pushed me into the bathtub. And I was the boy. Where we lived in the Cardinal Apartments. I don't know how we all lived there. Chrissy was living with Grandma. I don't know where David was. And that's where I got accused of sexually abusing that little girl, and then the police found out that it was her boyfriend. That was so embarrassing because everybody thought, well, you did it, and I was like, I didn't do it, and it was really hard, and I kept running away and acting out. I acted out because I knew that she wasn't any good for me, and I wanted to help her anyways. You know, and they put me in that Rice Hospital when I was like 10 for a couple months. And I did really good there. Dave used to play the piano for me. And I sat in Mary's office all the time. And she was the head nurse, and I watched her. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to become a nurse. But they used to restrain people. And I would watch. Well, I was the only kid there for a long time. And they used to bring people back from ECT treatments, electrical shock treatment. And they were just, and I would cry in my room. I would cry in my room and think, what am I doing here? And then I remember making things for my mom and my grandma too, like crafts projects. And they taught me how to make crafts. I mean, you had to do that. It was part of occupational therapy. There was no place for a 10-year-old. But they didn't have any place else for me. And I got those records before it was too late, before they were destroyed. And then I went to the state hospital at 11. I could sue the state of Minnesota for failure to protecting an innocent child. Because I have the records. All the other records of those kids were destroyed out there. I know what my number was. I had a number. That's what they classified me as just a number. Like I didn't have a name, or like I was some kind of test. And there were other boys. Well, when you first went out there, you got put in the locked unit, which was like the high intensity unit. And then you got put in the other cottage. And they used to make you sit in a room for behaving like a child. It was horrible. You know, I had friends there, really good friends, and some people that sexually abused me. You know, and I told the staff, and they knew. And they knew, and they would write things like, "This is a intelligent 11 or 12-year-old boy, but overly sexualized, like I had been sexually abused before. And physically abused. I mean, I still have the scars on my arms. I told you I was strangled. And it became a survival mechanism, it really did. After the staff didn't do anything, I remember that's where I laid in my bed and I prayed that somebody would come take me away. You know, just please come take me away. You know. And one night, I was crying and I couldn't stop crying, and they locked me in the seclusion room for crying. I could cry just thinking about that. But I won't. So, and then that's when they used to take me in that Wilmer State Hospital van in front of the other kids, in front of junior high kids. And there were tunnels underneath the state hospital, and they would make us walk in there. And they were not well people down there. There were severely mentally ill people there. Or mentally healthy people, but they had problems. And they had chemical addiction people there too, mixed in with little boys and girls. Of course, I was the youngest boy there. They had to have a special court order to put me there. How does the state of Minnesota put an 11 or 12-year-old boy in place with 16 and 17-year-old offenders? My offense? Not listening. And behaving like a child that wasn't cared for by its mother. Or by my mother. I rationalized her behavior for a long time. I said her mom was mean to her. She was mean to her. In the South, it wasn't. My mom disobeyed a lot of rules. She had a son, 2 sons, before my dad married her. My grandma gave one of them away. But my grandma, Frances, always loved me. For some reason. I can see her now in the kitchen in California. I would sit on the counter, and I said I helped her do dishes. Really, I just put them away. You know? And I remember that coin jar that she had for me. And I went to St. Francis Boys Home. And there were people there like Brenda, who used to take me home with them. And Peter. And Dawn. And it was hard. I didn't really want to leave there. We had a lot of fun. We went to the Boundary Waters. We camped on the shore of Lake Superior. That's where that picture I was taken when my feet were just touching the water. We used to soap up on top of the rocks and then jump off to get the soap off. And we portaged those canoes. Well, when you're that young, it seemed like forever. With a pack on your back and portaging canoes. I also electrocuted myself up there on accident at Barnon. I stuck a knife in the toaster, but I didn't get hurt for some reason. And the boys there were really nice. And so were the staff. You know why? It was a home. It was a home. Sure, there were rules. I mean, there was. You know, there were, like, you had to make your bed, and it's probably why I don't like making my bed now. You know, because it's, I don't know. Because I don't have to if I don't want to. I'm an adult. I'm a man, and that I can do what I want. And I can speak about what I want. And so I'm just speaking about more of this pain that happened to me when I was growing up that no one knew about. Or maybe they did. Maybe they took my words and they didn't understand them. I remember David, one of the social workers in Wilmer. I hated him. I was in a foster home once out by Pennock, but it wasn't Pennock. And I told him I had to go to the bathroom, and he stopped in the middle of the road, on the side of the road, and I took off running through the snow to this tree in the middle of the field And I did it on purpose. I was like, I want you to chase me for all the hurt did to me. And then I realized maybe he wasn't trying to hurt me. Chrissy talked about that too. But you know what they didn't do? They didn't say that. They didn't say, Steven, your mom's no good for you. They wrote it in my chart. Or this person isn't any good for you. They wrote that, but they never told me. And maybe if they would have told me, it would have stuck in my head like I could have been happy and I wouldn't have been though. I still would have wanted her because I thought I could help her. And I still love her. I mean, I would be lying if I said that I didn't. You know? And I don't even believe that stuff about Paul. Paul was a kind man. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But I looked at that writing, and I was like, that's not my mom's writing. So yeah. And there was other cases of sexual abuse I never reported. A lot of physical abuse. One thing about Wilmer though, all the kids in high school and stuff threatened to beat me up, and they threatened to tie me up and put me in a cornfield once. They never did. Well, a lot because my sisters were there, Chrissy and Marjorie. And maybe it's because they knew what I had been through. But they judged me all the time. They made fun of my hair, my clothes. I didn't have very many friends. In fact, I didn't even really know Eric until after school. I remember seeing him. And people from Wilmer were like, oh, well, you know, I had some friends that I really liked. Amy, Nancy, and Brian, John, Scott. He was honest, you know. There's more. Chris. And Lynn. And it's weird about Lynn, because we weren't really friends either. And Amy, the other Amy. And then Kim, my sister's friends. And we were pretty close. And Michelle. Remember Michelle? And Heather. But that was outside of school. And there were some others. You know? And so when I talk about like emotional abuse, I lived through so much. And when I think about Tom beating us, you know, Chrissy knows. I mean, we took the brunt of it to protect everybody else. It's probably why we were a lot alike in many ways. You know. And I don't blame anybody for my life. You know, I don't. I gave and gave and gave. I always gave my heart to people. And you know what? You know, maybe there was some things about my sexuality that were confusing. And maybe, yes, at times maybe I was looking for a mother figure or a father figure or a friend, or a soul connection that I could just... I told Sean the other night, I used to have... Sometimes when I laid next to people and had my arm around them when we were sleeping, one time, I told you this too, like I fell into their mind, and I just, you know, and that's a connection. I don't know if anybody else has had that, where you're sleeping so close to somebody and you're in sync with their breathing patterns, and you just fall into them. And you're right, I did turn to alcohol and drugs a lot of times, and it's not an excuse for what my life. Maybe it did help me numb things up. That's not the way to do it, though. That's why it's important to talk about your feelings. I had to talk about my feelings every day for years. And then the court forced me to talk about them again. And now I'm doing it freely. Without anybody forcing me to. Maybe that's freeing some pain for other people. I hope it makes people like do some inner thinking and inner work on their own. You know? And the only thing that I ever wanted, I wanted a family. And that kept getting taken away from me. And so I would make my own families. I'd be like, you're part of my family. You. And maybe I was blaming women for like lying to their daughters. That's not my place to blame them anymore. They have to live with that themselves. I do know something about, myself, that I'm not gonna lie to my daughters. I'm not. And if that takes this lifetime or next lifetime, or 100 lifetimes, I will be that way forever. You know. And there were times that I had to, there were times where I didn't tell the truth. Or I told people the truth that they could handle at the time. I didn't tell people when I stopped taking my medication because it was making me into a zombie. I didn't tell them that I stopped because I felt 100% better once I stopped taking it. I told you before that there were periods of time at Cabrini and before that where I was just like, I was just doing rote living. I mean, I was doing things and I was conscious of doing them and aware that I was doing them, but it wasn't living. And people are like, well, why don't you get out and live? You know why? Because I enjoy doing this. And I enjoy doing this kind of work. I enjoy it out there too. I'm a different person, and no one's really been able to. Everybody wants me to change and do this, do this, do this, do this. And it's like, do it yourself. If you're so dead set on having somebody do it, get the courage up to do it yourself. Because I've always been okay with the way I am. And I don't care what anybody says. And Savea and Mia, if you grow up to judge me, good. Just remember where you came from. And remember who you look like. remember who loved you more than anything. You know? There were people in my life that knew what was going on with me. That could have helped. And they didn't. Some tried. You know. I told you some people made me out to be a monster. And they used to follow me. And I couldn't leave that Cabrini without people following me. I swear the police or somebody was watching me too. And I hadn't done anything wrong. And I know people have been like trying to steal my identity. There's parts of my life that are shielded from my own memory. And probably for a good reason. Yes. Driving up to Clearwater in California, or Clear Lake, Tom used to drive so fast. I swear we were going to fall off that mountain all the time. And it was just this, it was horrible. And Aunt Barbara knew we were getting beat up really bad. But Aunt Barbara and Mom didn't have the same fathers. I loved her like a mom, though. And when Mom said that Uncle Max had sexually abused a child, I was crushed.